Welcome to my diary, beloved. I'm Tatami, and today I'm calling an emergency meeting with my comrades to discuss the squad. It's long overdue. And this was prompted when about 2 weeks ago I saw a video by Chris Smalls. His YouTube channel is called It's a Smalls World, and he was the activist with Amazon who tried to unionize in New York and was fired for it. He basically noted that he was at the point where he felt the squad was an elite group of grifters who had, for the most part, if not all of them, at least a portion of them, already bent the knee to the empire, to the establishment, to the powers that be, and were at the point where they were deliberately holding the left back from progress, deliberately leading the left astray, deliberately making us feel like we have something when we have someone clapping back on Twitter, but unable to actually perform in the halls with the actual laws because they are doing it on purpose. They are purposefully taking turns, making one or two of them the hero at certain points, making one or two of them the one that votes no, or the one that stands up and makes a fiery speech. And that's when the rest of them sit down and kind of go with the status quo. And then they take turns so that the heat isn't always on just one or two of them. And effectively, that makes it so we go through phases of, whoa, what are they doing? And then, oh yeah, well, see, I knew that person was cool. I thought when I saw their interview initially before they were elected, I knew they were cool. And I've also seen people make the argument that essentially it's like a Three Stooges argument with the squad, which is they just don't know what they're doing, they're just bumbling around, and whoops, they didn't manage to get anything passed for the left. They haven't managed to get anything really accomplished that involves the actual laws. They've managed to pressure some people via social media, which involves the hordes of us who are the fans and the following, keeping an eye and being fans and retweeting and sharing and making videos, etc. But when it comes to actually forcing the vote, they haven't. And, this isn't because of a malicious intent, like Chris Smalls was saying. This is more because they just, they haven't been able to really come together in that way. And, who knows? There's also perhaps the possibility that the squad is a bunch of like Lone Ranger rebels with their own causes, and that they just can't work on a team. They each just, going their own way, going solo with their own ideas of what to do. And that seems a little, it feels like we're giving some people the superhero treatment, especially considering most of the squad is not activists. You know what I'm saying? Like I've said with AOC, name the activist who claims her. Name the organization, a radical or even rather mild organization that has ever really claimed her. And, and you don't have to just be on the streets. I'm not saying that either. There is like the work you could be putting into your community besides actual protesting that I think people could still be, uplifted for, even though they didn't physically put their bodies in the streets in that particular way. But like I said, you really don't see it with much of anybody except for Cori Bush. And that Cori Bush is one of the few reasons why I'm like holding out hope, like side-eyeing her, like, girl, are you really gonna go from like a decade of actually being in the trenches to bending the knee right quick, but I also have to give her the credit that she is starting new. And AOC had like 3 years before Jimmy Dore was like, are they gonna force how many votes do y'all need? How many votes do y'all need before you'll do something? Oh, I need to go check my monkey bread, excuse me. All right, so I think it's non-controversial at this point to note that Jimmy Dore's force the vote philosophy has been basically accepted, and it's been adopted by pretty much everyone major on the left, all major leftist figures who talk politics that specific way. Whether or not they've said it out loud, admitted it, been like, oh, I was wrong about this, or like, I don't like Jimmy, but he was right about, whether they've said any of that out loud at all, everyone's kind of adopted that stance. Everyone's either started saying force the vote or started saying the description of forcing the vote. And they're wondering, where is the force? What are you going to force? What is that thing you all are going to put your foot down and stamp down and say, this is where we draw the line? And I mean, it just kind of gets to a point where months pass, months and months pass, and they're never weaponizing their vote. They're never raising hell. They're never becoming that enemy. And what's so bizarre watching it, especially, is the fact that, the establishment is absolutely throwing them under the bus and using them as a scapegoat and all of this nastiness, whatever it needs to, even has half a chance and just feels like it looks like sometimes. They waste no issue continuing the constant propaganda against what's actually propaganda against the far left, but they get labeled with a lot of it, especially because they're the ones that are there. And I think that it's just kind of getting to a point where we have to remember that, like, these are not radicals. So this idea that they were going to be put in and start acting like Tea Party, it's like, why were these people chosen for this, Justice Dems position where they were supposed to be like infiltrators, like crazy infiltrators? And I think it just speaks so heavily to the fact that we do need to start focusing more on getting actually working class people into there, but also actual far leftists. We need to get somebody in there who's actually like a communist and or a socialist, or somebody who's holding down that fort on the far left, so that it can actually show people just how moderate and just, basic a lot of the stuff that the squad is even asking for is, and then also will expose how little fight they clearly seem to have. I think, like, I was going through the list of everybody who's in the squad earlier, and I was like looking at each person. I kind of feel like some of it's a little of all three of the things I said earlier. There is a part of it where there is some naive people, some people who are newer. I think that there's also elements of fear. It's probably really scary. There's threats constantly. So there's the element of not wanting to push too many buttons or raise too much hell. Then there's also the fact that I do think that they all think that they're kind of lone rangers. Like, when I look at each individual person, I don't really recall times where it seemed like they were all coming together as a unit. It always is one person standing up. And that does bring me back to Chris Maul's observation that it just seems convenient that there's always one random hero or two. Like, there's always like one or two, and then otherwise it's just, it's just every man for himself. But is it by design is the real question. Are they doing this because they are deliberately trying to hold us back? And I wouldn't want to think that about anybody, but I will say that the evidence is damaging. And the evidence is we don't have really much of anything, nor do we even have situations we can hold on to where we were like, they really gave that a really good fight. They really showed them what was boss. But instead, what we're seeing is a lot of concessions, a lot of talking down to us out here, especially by AOC. But it just feels like it's a bit condescending. I've also considered whether or not this is a form of a protection plan for the members of the squad when they do things like make one the hero and other ones sit down and kind of kneecap themselves from progress. Is that a way to defend themselves from some sort of evils that the rest of us aren't able to really understand or comprehend. I do know that there's the game to be played where it's like you scratch my back, I scratch yours. But again, that's not what the squad was supposed to be doing. The squad was supposed to be going in there and ruffling everyone's feathers, since everyone had been kind of shitting on the left. And I'm at the point where I'm not really sure the squad can really be salvaged, because I just don't really see any indication that any of this is going to change. I don't see any indication that they are going to start really laying down the law and throwing their weight around what little they have. And if they're not able to really continue to show us anything, I really wonder how much like further any of that can go. If they're not willing to throw their weight around, the consequences are enormous, right? This isn't just like, oh, let's be mean and like pick on the squad and the left tears itself apart. No, this is about making progress, getting something done, because the consequences are so dire, because it's the planet at stake, because there are millions of lives at stake, because the way this place is set up right now, we have billionaires who are hoarding wealth by overworking the lower class so that they're like dropping out, passing out in the aisles, passing out in the factories and the warehouses, and these dipshits are using up all the wealth so that they can blast rocket tests that each have an environmental impact and leave litter everywhere in the cosmos and the sky, landing all around on the earth and on the planet, and everyone is just cheering them on, and that's the future. And in reality, there's so much like that just needs to stop now. That just, the way our system is set up is mind-boggling. It's sad. It's disgusting. And it's not about coddling and like using kitten gloves with these politicians because like we've got to nice them into it. No, if they're not going to do what they are supposed to do, I think we need to focus on someone and something else. We need, I mean, if you're still giving your money to AOC after she gave it to establishment Dems, I don't know what you're doing, honey. But I think you need to, if you haven't already, make the switch to a third party. And I think we need to try to really focus on getting those third party members into seats. And I do think we need to focus on more local as well. But it would make a huge difference, I think, if we could get someone in the House that was an actual far leftist, a radical leftist, as they like to call us. And I think it would really change how everything was looked at. We need somebody, even if we had somebody who was like a progressive Dem, a socialist Dem, who actually was willing to raise a little bit of hell, I think it could have made a difference. But I don't think any of the members of the squad, I don't think we're really there yet. We'll see with Cori Bush, but I don't know. She's really excited to be a part of this squad, and I'm a little worried about going in the future. We're going to see a little of that same thing where it's like, oh, this week they do something that's like power to the people, and then next week you're like, oh, what's going on? Twitter. And then next time they're like, yeah, power to the people. And then here we go again. And it just feels like that's the circle jerk AOC has led us on for years now. And that's just the circle jerk that the squad in general has laid on us. And it seems impossible to me that they just haven't had meetings in all these months, in all these years. With those salaries, like, with y'all being contractually obligated to be in DC in the same town as each other, it just seems a little weird to me to believe that these people have not all talked to each other. And so that's why I'm leaning towards the idea that we either have a bunch of scared people in the squad, and there might be a little bit of grift going on there as well. We've got some people who are trying to socially climb and financially climb, and some people who are perhaps eyeing other seats in the House. They've turned to a more longer term goals when it comes to being a politician. I think we've got a little of all of that. I'm curious to know what you all think as well. What are you thinking about the squad? I'm sure some of you have been kind of giving them the side eye lately, especially, like I said, like, you know, you don't have to like Jimmy Dore for you to have recognized that he opened the eyes of a lot of people on the left. He raised a very valid question. He was like that weird point in the movie where somebody like points out the obvious and then everyone's like, oh my gosh, yeah, actually. He's got a point. What the heck is going on here, sir? Because we've been kind of going by the trust system, the honor system, and there's only so long that can take you. And I think that's really where we're getting with the squad. I don't know. What do you all think? All right, may your ancestors and spirit guides be with you at every crossroads, and I will see you next time.